Okay, all right. So we talked about the observational method. That's where we ended. And like I said, um, you know, I won't be asking a lot of questions about this on the exams. I just want to briefly get through it. And so, the observational method, we have ethnography, in which you actually go amongst the group you are studying. You know, and you can have a more scientific approach where you can have you can code the observations that you're looking for so you can more scientifically test whatever research questions you have. But there are limits of the observational methods, okay? So certain kinds of behaviors are difficult to observe because they only occur in private, right? So can you guys think of examples of this?
No, okay.
Sure, yeah.
Some
Good.
people do it in public though.
Jen?
Like when you visit a psychologist, it's kind of like
Mm-hmm.
privacy.
Right, totally, yeah. You would never, it wouldn't be very ethical to conduct an observational experiment during, a counseling appointment, right? And so, those are good. And so we don't just want to describe behavior or observe it, but we also want to be able to predict and explain behavior. So that's another limit of the observational method. This requires a more experimental approach, okay? And that's where, oh, come on. I think, okay. So, okay, working. Cool. So now we have the correlational method. Okay. Have you guys taken a research methods course yet? Some of you have. Some of you haven't taken a statistics course. Okay. How many people have not taken research methods or statistics? Okay. And of those, how many don't know what the correlational approach is? Okay. So basically, we are just trying to. Who is your Psych 100 professor?
100?
Yeah.
Nick Hertz.
Oh, okay. I'll talk to him.
Hey, what's up, man?
So the correlational approach, we're just trying to find basic relationships between different variables. Okay. So we measure two variables. Perhaps we're interested in finding the relationship between playing aggressive video games and aggression. Okay. So we give someone a survey on aggression, ask them a bunch of questions related to aggression. It gives us a number, maybe from 1 to 10. 10 being high aggression, 1 being low aggression, and then we measure the amount of time they play video games a week. Okay, and we run a correlation, and it gives us a number from -1 to 1. Okay. That tells us the strength of that relationship. Okay. The closer you are to 1 and -1, the stronger the relationship is between the two variables you're measuring.
Oh, perhaps we did go over this. Only slightly.
Thought so. And so, kind of went over this, but surveys are often used in correlational methods. Okay, we distribute it to people. We ask them questions about their attitudes, and it allows us to quantify their attitude. By quantifying, mean give us, a number so that we can correlate it with another number. But what's the limit of a correlational method? Anton?
It doesn't show cause and effect.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know if people are playing, if aggressive video games is causing aggression, or if people being aggressive in the first place is causing them to play violent video games, right? Okay. And all of these other things. A might cause B, B might cause A, or there might be some third variable that's causing both A and B. It could be that people who are, more aggressive are more likely to drop out of school. And so because they are not in school, they have more time to play video games. Maybe it has something to actually do with aggression. You guys asked me to give you the PowerPoint slides, but no one actually really has them.
I thought you said you were putting them up after class. I didn't notice it was up there.
Oh no, they're up. Don't you guys get a notification from Blackboard?
Yeah.
Did you guys get it?
Yes.
Okay, and so if we do want to study cause and effect, then we use the experimental method, just the gold standard of scientific research. Okay, an experiment always involves a researcher randomly assigning participants to one of two groups, typically a control group or the experimental group. Okay, and so the experimental method always involves a direct intervention from a researcher. So what I mean when I say this, think about our video game example again. Okay, it wasn't experimental, it was correlational, but I want to make it experimental. Okay, so what I would do is, take 30 people from the population, randomly split them into two groups. Okay, I'll call them the non-aggression group and the aggression group. The aggression group, I want to make them feel some sort of aggression. So I make them solve an unsolvable word puzzle. Okay, it's like meant to really, really irritate you. Okay, and I give them like an hour. So by the end of it, they're probably feeling pretty irritated, hopefully aggressive, And then the other group, I give them a really easy word puzzle to solve. Okay. And then I have them both play video games, and I measure the amount of time that they play before taking a break. Okay. My hypothesis is that the group in which I intervened and caused aggression would play longer than the other group, right? And so in that case, I actually can establish cause and effect. You guys bored yet? It's really boring. It's the worst part of social psychology. But the most important. So there's always an independent variable. Okay, so that's the variable that the researcher changes in order to see if it has an effect on the dependent variable. And the dependent variable is what we measure. Okay, so in our example, the independent variable is aggression, and the dependent variable is length of time spent playing video games. Okay, who cares about that? Okay. Okay, here we go. Okay, social cognition. Okay, so we're going to talk about two different ways that people think. Okay, so we have a low effort system. This is mostly an automatic process. It's unconscious. And in describing this, we're going to talk about schemas and heuristics. Okay, so heuristics are how we apply schemas. Okay, do you guys know what schemas are? Who knows what schemas are? Some people. Heuristics. Okay, so this is the first time that most of you are learning about schemas. Okay, well, for some people not, but for most, yes. Exciting. Okay, I love schemas. They're so interesting to me. And then we're going to talk about high effort thinking, system 2. This involves more controlled, more effortful thinking. Okay. Okay. So remember when we went over the two basic motivations that humans have, right? The first is a need to have high self-esteem, okay? And the other is the need to be accurate, right? And that definition is what we call social cognition, okay? How people think about themselves as well as the social world, okay? More specifically, how we select, interpret, remember, and use social information to make judgments and decisions, okay? So the interesting part about this, and we cover this when we talk about constant rules, is that we don't always have an accurate representation of the world. Okay, and this causes us to make mistakes. It causes us to use mental shortcuts to make decisions. And most of the time, we are really good at using mental shortcuts. But sometimes we're not. Okay, so automatic thinking, okay? So this is when we are able to perceive something without putting a lot of attention into it, okay? It's low effort and it's fast. It's involuntary. Okay. I think the slide that I wanted to show you, I'm gonna flash it on the screen. I think it's the next slide, but I'm not 100% sure, okay? So I want everyone to look at the screen for 1 second, okay? Okay, so what did you guys see?
Angry woman.
Angry woman, but I only flashed it for a second, right? So that is an example of how we use automatic thinking, okay? It's autopilot. It allows us to quickly size up a situation. And we're often correct, okay? And this is a really useful type of thinking because we are constantly confronted with situations that we haven't faced before, but that we have to kind of know how to act, like the first day of school, right? Or when trying to decide if an object is in front of another object when we're driving, okay? We don't really put a lot of attention into it, okay? We just kind of can do this automatically. Or if I want to locate the source of a sudden sound, like someone's phone's vibrating and I know where it is, you know. Question?
Does this also work when you're trying to wing it at something?
Um,
You're doing a task?
when you're like what kind of task?
Well, if you don't know how to do something,
Mhm.
I gotta do it anyway. I'm just gonna wing it. Hopefully it's right.
Yeah, totally. And that also probably depends a little bit on some past experience that you have, you know. Helps you kind of build up expectations for similar tasks, you know. I've never taught, a sensation and perception class, you know. but I've taught a bunch of other classes, so that might give me some confidence to like rely on my automatic thinking, you know. And so we're able to understand sentences that we've never seen before. You know, 2 + 2 real quickly. Recognize the look of anger. And these were some of the examples that I've talked about. Okay, so system 1, automatic unconscious thinking. It helps us in situations that we've never been in before, but that we can have expectations about based on past experiences. Okay. And again, we also engage in the alternative, which is high effort thinking, but that takes energy. And we don't want to expend energy. Okay, we want to save it for other things. We want to save it for Facebook, right? We don't want to pay attention in class. That's going to take away energy from Facebook. Whitney?
Is the automatic system like capacity versus ability? So like for your question, what would happen when you're driving on a new road? If that system wasn't there, if you didn't have it, you wouldn't necessarily not be able to navigate it, but your capacity, like, is that sort of how it?
I'm not 100% sure what you're trying to say. Could you rephrase that?
Okay, how can I simplify that? Like, does it have to do with ability rather than capacity? The automatic system.
Yeah, I think it has to do with both. You know, and I think we'll. So you're saying that has, you know, perhaps it has to do with ability and not capacity.
Just like that question, what would happen if you didn't have system 1 for driving on a new road? It made me think like, well, what would you not be able to drive on that new road?
So having the automatic thinking, you know, makes you think like, well, I've never been on this road, but I know it's a road, you know, because my brain has a category, you know, or like, I have like an area in my brain that, schema. Yeah, I'm trying not to use that yet. And so yes, but I'm still not sure if we answered your question. Okay. Won't promise. Okay, so schemas are the mechanism for which allows us to think automatically, okay? Think of these in 2 ways, okay? They are mental structures that we have in our brain, like kind of like mental filing cabinets that organize information around themes and subjects, and I'll get a little into that. Well, let me start over. Okay. So you can think of it as like an organizational filing cabinet, okay, of information in our brains, but it also helps us organize incoming information. And we have schemas for pretty much everything. I have a video here. Let's watch this video. Apologize if this is a dumb video.
Most of the factors that
Make this louder.
predict whether or not something that is being perceived will also be remembered operate in the first few seconds of learning. One of these factors involves something termed a schema, and whether or not the new learning bumps into one. Let me show you an example of a schema by having Dr. Whitehead and myself read a paragraph to you, one actually taken from a famous research paper. Your job is to remember as many facts about the paragraph as you can. Let me tell you in advance that you are going to fail miserably at this task unless I do something first. I can instantly improve your memory score from between 50 to 100% simply by adding 7 little words before you hear Dr. Whitehead and myself. But I'm not going to do that. You will hear the paragraph first, then I will read you the words.
The procedure is actually quite simple. First, you arrange things into different groups. Of course, one pile may be sufficient, depending on how much there is to do.
If you have to go somewhere else due to lack of facilities, that is the next step. Otherwise, you are pretty well set. It is important not to overdo things. That is, it is better to do too few things at once than too many.
In the short run, this might not seem important, but complications can easily arise. A mistake can be expensive as well.
After the procedure is completed, one arranges the materials into different groups again. Then they can be put into their appropriate places.
Eventually, they'll be used once more, and the whole cycle will have to be repeated. However, that is a part of life.
Did you get all that? No?
Do you guys know what they're talking about? Okay. Hey, well, if you don't know it, don't say it. But
It's hard.
so that's
It's
my
hard to
bad.
decipher
My bad.
the accent.
Okay. So now we'll watch.
Let us give you now the 7 magic little words. This paragraph is all about washing clothes. What that sentence provides for you is a mental framework, a way of organizing thoughts around some aspect of the world. We call such frameworks schemas, and you have them about people, situations, objects. This means something profound. Prior knowledge can disturbingly shape how you memorize and retain for long-term storage future knowledge. If a schema is triggered near the moment of learning, that learning is more permanent.
Brainless!
Okay. So let's just
Involves
rewatch.
something jumps into one. After you, one actually take a research paper is to remember as many facts about. Let me tell you in advance that you are going to fail miserably at this task unless I do something first. I can instantly improve your memory to 100%, 7 little words before you hear Dr. Whitehead and myself. But I'm not going to do that. You will hear the paragraph first, then I will read you the words.
The procedure is actually quite simple. First, you arrange things into different groups. Of course, one pile may be sufficient, depending on how much there is to do.
If you have to go somewhere else due to lack of facilities, that is the next step. Otherwise, you are pretty well set. It is important not to overdo things. That is, it is better to do too few things at once than too many.
In the short run, this might not seem important, but complications can easily arise. A mistake can be expensive as well.
After the procedure is completed, one arranges the materials into different groups again. Then they can be put into their appropriate places.
Eventually, they'll be used once more, and the whole cycle will have to be repeated. However, that is a part of life.
All right, so that made way more sense, right? Right, I hope. So, do you guys see how, like, activating that schema about laundry helped us organize the incoming information way different? Okay. Before we move on, can someone in one of the front rows rip off a piece of paper, label it extra credit attendance, and then pass it around? I'll give you guys half a point for being here today. Okay. I know it's not a lot, but it'll build up over the semester. Okay, so like I said, we have schemas for everything. We have schemas about ourselves, okay? So you guys have schemas about yourself, right? You know, like your favorite hobbies, your favorite TV shows, you know, your favorite beer. You know, someone mentions like, oh, like I was drinking, you know, Blue Moon last night. Like, oh, I like Blue Moon, you know? You're like, that's me. Like, I love Game of Thrones. You know, Bran is the Night King, you know. We have schemas about other people, you know, like Ali sucks. You know, that's my schema about Ali sucks. You Whenever people talk about other people sucking, you think about me. You're like, Elise sucks too.
Now that you're planting that seed.
Yeah.
The self-fulfilling prophecy.
Right. Yeah. Well, on your end, so don't start treating me like I suck. Okay? 'Cause by the end of the semester, I'll really suck. And so we also have schemas about social roles, right? How we are supposed to act in certain situations. Okay. Raised in a society where we're led to believe that women are supposed to act in a certain way, men are supposed to act in a certain way, people from different races are supposed to act in a certain way. And this obviously differs on an individual basis. Okay, some people's schemas are different than other people's schemas. Okay, and they help us organize incoming information. There also is like a filing cabinet in our brain, okay, that we can access, okay? So it organizes incoming information, but it also stores information in our brains, okay? And they cause problems. So let's talk a little bit about how schemas are related to the self-fulfilling prophecy that we talked about last week. Okay, so do you guys remember the self-fulfilling prophecy thing where the teachers were given a list of students who were supposed to perform who had higher IQs? You know, they didn't actually have higher IQs, but by the end of the semester, they did have higher IQs. Okay, so someone take a stab at it. Talk about schemas in relation to this concept. Aaron?
If the students fit the usual scheme, I guess, of what a bad student looks or acts like, then they would be less inclined to help those students in the class.
Okay, so, and if I repeat what you said, it's because of, I want the people online to know. So that kind of touches on it. Okay, we're activating their schemas about how good and bad good students act. Okay, Shelby, I'm sorry.
I have a weird handwriting thing, but like entering into like new romantic relationships after going through like a series of old ones, maybe following the same pattern. Like you react the same way.
Okay,
A certain response.
so that is an important area, but just in terms of like that, like the teacher example that I was talking about, how would schemas come into play?
Also, like conversely, children who fall into the good student schema will be more attended to. Therefore,
Okay, but why?
Why from the teachers?
Yeah.
Because they see potential to foster that potential.
Okay, so rephrase it in the way that I was kind of talking about schemas. Okay, so someone tells me that Whitney is a smart student. Okay, so what does that do for me? So what happens?
You think that I'm more capable?
Okay, so it's activating my schema for how
Of what a smart student is.
what a smart student is, and then Alicia, and then what happens?
Is it because you've taught students in the past that have exhibited the same qualities, so therefore you're filing it in your head that they would be a good student?
So that's probably how the schema began, right? I have I've been teaching smart kids. I know how they act. I know that how I should act with them. Okay, so I'm building the schema. Okay, and then you tell me that certain students are smarter than others. Okay, so that activates my schema of how a smart student acts and how I should act with them. Okay, so then what happens? My schema tells me that I should be more attentive to smart students. I should call on them more. Okay, I should help them longer with their homework. I should give them more chances when they fail. So then I start acting in those ways, right? Because the schema is activated, and then they do better, right? Okay, does that make sense to you guys? Okay, Sarah?
Are schemas associated with assumptions as well?
Totally, right. And sometimes assumptions are way wrong, right? Because our schemas are, they work in most areas, but not all areas. Lindsay?
Yes.
Did you have your hand up?
No.
Okay, we better say something now. Whitney?
So it's like the behaviors play on each other, allowing for more opportunity and thus increasing the likelihood of like that situation occurring or like the condition to become true.
Totally, yeah, and that's what self-fulfilling prophecy is. Right? Okay. And so we have a schema here for a sports car. Okay, you see it, and this is like a theoretical way of, that this might be represented in our brain. Okay, sports car is connected to the shiny concept, connected to the fast concept, connected to the expensive concept, and the small. Okay, so when I hear sports car, the theory is that all those other things get activated too. Okay. Okay, and so stereotypes, okay? Stereotypes are examples of schemas we have, okay? When we apply schemas to a group of people, that is called a stereotype. And just like I said about schemas, stereotypes are applied rapidly and automatically. Okay, and the rate to which we have stereotypes depends on the person. Okay, the strength of certain stereotypes depends on the person. Okay, and it also depends on the situation. And it can cause small or large problems. Okay. So we just talked about how how schemas can influence or is related to the self-fulfilling prophecy, right? So now let's talk about it with this example, okay? Why don't you guys split up into groups of 3 or 4, or 2, I don't know. Does everyone know the Trayvon Martin? Does someone want to explain it? So Trayvon Martin was walking down the street wearing a hoodie, and he was shot to death by George Zimmerman, who is a neighborhood watch volunteer. Martin was acting completely harmless, and he was just returning from a convenience store to his father's fiance. Does anyone have anything else to add to this?
Trayvon Martin, from what I've read and heard, did not act completely harmless and actually did harm George Zimmerman a lot.
Okay. So based on the assumption that Trayvon Martin was harmless, I want you guys to break out into groups and talk about how schema, or either way. Okay. I want you to talk about how schemas were came into play in this situation, and then we'll talk about it after like a few minutes. Okay.
I had all this stuff that I was gonna say, and now I lost it. Same. Okay, let's try. I'm done for the day. And it functions not coming back tomorrow. Yeah. Okay. And like just thinking of like this video, and I was like, using our own training, and then that was like, I don't think there's a video, so I think you're what you do is talk, so there's not like a podcast, there's not a body cam, because he wasn't a cop, it's part of the use the like transfer like I think what happened was
mistaken for someone who has been sentenced. And he couldn't hear what he was saying because he was far away from him. He wasn't working at he either wanted to be involved or he was an ex-cop, but he was not a cop at the time.
Yeah.
I did read a little bit more on that.
I don't know what else he does
Smart and very
Because another schema could have been success. I don't know what's the next stereotype. Where was the rotated? I'm not sure. It was south of here. I think it might have been. I think it was in Georgia. I'm not 100% sure.
So the only person seems dangerous. And then probably
No, he was born in Yeah, he was shot. He was shot in Sanford,
yeah, it didn't show
Okay. Okay, guys. You guys come up with some stuff to talk about. Let's start somewhere over here. Anyone have interesting topic of conversation that have schemas were related, or over here? The first hand I saw. I got nervous. Okay? This isn't easy.
So, you know, we really, I at least don't really know that a whole lot around that whole situation, but we were speculating that a possible schema for George Zimmerman was activated of like dangerous person,
Mhm.
so like the area that he was in.
And how do you act towards a dangerous person?
So-
Especially if you're like a, you know,
neighborhood watch volunteer. So
Yeah.
he called in a suspicious person's report.
Mm-hmm.
And so what that was is like his schema for like possible dangerous person got activated. He was
Mhm.
seeing this young kid, possibly harmful or harmless, walking down the street
Mhm.
wearing a hoodie. Therefore, like that schema got activated.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Bradley. Okay. Yeah.
We were talking about a schema that Jordan Zimmerman probably had was like he probably had a schema like perception of when, what time of night, what time of day crimes usually happen,
Mhm.
and then like she was mentioning what they would wear and
Mhm.
where they would be located at.
Mm.
I think he knew in that general area they did kind of have a higher rate of crime.
Mhm.
Those three schemas, and then you also mentioned that being a volunteer neighborhood watch, his schemas were probably like heightened,
Mhm.
like he was more acceptable
Right,
to like
right.
more information than a normal person would
Mm.
because of the position and place he was at.
Good. All good stuff. Matt.
Oh, well, he was obviously racist, so I'm guessing he had a schema that black people were somehow more dangerous or less than, and that's why he chose to act that way.
So you're saying that he had a schema. His schema was that people who were black or might be more likely to commit to be harmful. Shelby,
I was actually gonna bounce off of her.
bounce off of her.
Yep. Well, like I agree with her mostly because when he did call the police, they told him to stand down,
Mm-hmm.
and he followed this kid.
Mm-hmm.
They told him not to.
So he really pursued his schema.
Yes.
Okay. So you guys understand how schemas and stereotypes are related? Okay. Do you understand how a stereotype is an example of a schema? Okay. Good. Let's move on. Okay, so I think I've hopefully proved this point that schemas help us, that they're important because they help us make sense of the world. They help us fill in gaps of knowledge. Okay. And they help us interpret ambiguous situations. Okay, there's a person walking in the street. Okay, he's wearing a hoodie. He's an African American. Okay, it's ambiguous to me. So how do I interpret this? Okay, well, if I have a negative stereotype for those things, then I might interpret it as dangerous. Okay. Looking for patterns in the environment is super helpful. So I see stripes. Okay, I might think, oh, tiger. That might save my life. Or I might think zebra. And I don't really think anything much more about that, other than like, why am I around a zebra? Okay, and the book talks about this example of the speaker, right? So the class has a guest speaker, and you get a description of the speaker beforehand. Okay, half the class is told that the speaker is warm, and half the class is told that the speaker is cold. Okay, the people who read the description of the speaker being warm, when they rated his performance, rated him way higher on all sorts of attributes related to being competent. They rated him as smarter, better looking. I can't remember everything except that the people who read the cold description rated the speaker lower on everything, right? Because hearing warm activated a different schema than hearing the word cold. Okay, warm is associated with positive attributes, and cold is associated with negative attributes. Did that example make sense to everyone? Okay. It's like reading the Rate My Professor of a professor before he takes his class, right? If you read if all the comments are like, this guy's a jackass, you know, you're probably going to react differently to the professor than if it, you know, they say like, oh, he's a nice guy, he gives extra credit for no reason, you know. And then they cause you to interpret, you know, ambiguous information differently. And then that causes you to act different toward that professor. Okay, so then the super nice professor who's never done anything wrong to anyone becomes a miserable old man by the time he's about to retire, right? And it's your fault, right? Okay. And so more on this line, we're cognitively lazy. We don't like thinking, especially if we think we can make an accurate assessment with way less thinking. Okay? Our resources are limited, and we don't want to use them all on normal occurrences. Okay? And they also help us fill in the blanks when we're trying to remember information. So this can lead to false memories. Okay, the most famous, or you know, one of the most famous studies done in this area is with eyewitness testimony, where they have people judge the speed of a car right before it crashes. Okay, half the people are told that are asked how fast was the car going when it crashed into the other car, and the other half are told how fast was the car going when it smashed into the other car. Right? The people who heard smashed thought that the car was going on average 20 miles per hour faster, right? Only because they heard the word smash. It activated the schema. If you're smashing into something, that probably meant that you were going faster. Okay, and so that's how it can result in false memories. Okay, so how do we apply schemas? 2 important points. Accessibilities. Okay, this is the extent to which a schema is at the forefront of our brain. Okay, and you can think of the brain as like a fishbowl. Okay, in which, you know, each fish is a different schema. Okay, but the fish that are at the top of the fishbowl are accessible schemas. Okay, they're more readily available. Okay, we can access them better. Okay, you're less likely to use memories from when you were 7 and apply that to a judgment than something that happened like an hour ago. Okay, because the schema, because that fish is, you know, higher the fishbowl, right? God, I'm gonna have to cut that out of the lecture for the online people because that's ridiculous. Okay, and priming is another mechanism for which we apply schemas. I'm going to talk about both of these more in depth right now. Okay, so there are 3 things that affect accessibility when we're applying a schema. Past experiences, relationship to a current goal, and recent experiences. Okay, so I come across this old man, okay, and I want to know, what is this old man all about? Anton?
No, I
Oh, gotcha.
I was just trying to read the thing at the bottom.
Gotcha. I'll explain it. Okay. So past experiences can affect the schema we apply in this guy. Okay, so I'm going to look at this guy's salient features, and salient just means anything that is prominent. Okay, and so perhaps I have an alcoholic father, or an alcoholic parent, or you know, a significant other is an alcoholic. Okay, so that might make it more likely for me to think that this person is an alcoholic. Okay, because my past experiences make my alcoholic schema higher in the fishbowl. Sarah?
Can it also be based off of just what people tell you?
Yeah, totally.
Like I said, past experiences, you've just been
Yeah, so there are many things that can make a schema more accessible. Yeah, I'm just talking about like three main ways. Okay. A relationship to a current goal can also make a schema more accessible. Okay, so maybe I'm studying for an abnormal psych exam. Maybe I'm studying for Nick's abnormal psych exam. Okay? I've been studying for hours on end. Okay? And so I come across this old man looking all dirty, and I think, oh, this guy's just mentally ill. He's not an alcoholic, he's mentally ill. Okay? Because my relationship to the goal of passing this abnormal psych exam has made my mentally ill schema more accessible. So I'm more likely to apply it. Do I have everyone so far? This makes sense. This is easy, right?
Yes.
Psychology is easy.
It is.
Okay, recent experiences also make schemas more accessible. Okay, so maybe I just came from my photography class and I'm interpreting this man as a model posing for a picture. Okay, super ridiculous.
It could be true.
But it could be true. You know, I might think. I mean, there's probably a better example than this. You know.
You just saw a drunk man walking out of a restaurant.
Yeah, I just saw a drunk man walking out of a restaurant, so I was like, this drunk man sitting after a restaurant.
It could be more likely that you would think of him as a model.
A candidate? Oh, right,
Instead
right.
of that he is a model.
Right, so he didn't wake up thinking he was going to be a model. Right.
He's America's
PR.
next top
How
model.
do you exactly draw the line between like recent and past experience? Like how recent? Was it like the hour within the day?
Yeah, so there, I don't have an exact response for you, but yeah, I mean, it's definitely a gray area. You know, something recent. Now, I'm not going to cheer you on the exam.
Okay.
Okay. But something that's past for someone, you know, might be recent for me. You know, but recent, I'm talking about something, you know, at least like in the bounds of this class that happened that day. Okay. We're good? No questions? Could you guys do wellness if we had a pop quiz at the end of class? We don't, but
I'm fine with
I just want to know if you could.
The entire class got dead quiet.
Yeah. I know, it was nice.
that. Was fine.
Okay, so priming also makes schemas, is a mechanism that makes schemas more available. Okay? And so an example of this, two really influential studies. So they had people do crossword puzzles, two different crossword puzzles. One had words they were just regular words they had to find. The other crossword puzzle had words related to old people. Okay, they had to find these words related to old people. Okay, and then the participants were told that they had to go to the next portion of the experiment, and it was like down the hall. Okay, so this is the important part of the experiment. They measured how long it took participants to walk down the hall. Okay, and they found that the people who took the old people crossword puzzle walked slower than the people who took the regular crossword puzzle. Okay, and their explanation for this was that the people who had to find the words related to old people, their schema of old people was activated, and part of the schema was that old people walk slow. Okay? It's called priming. Okay? It happened without their unconscious knowledge. They were primed. Okay? Another example. They had people put a pencil in their mouth like this. Alright? Or like this. And they ask them how positive they feel. Okay? The people who have the pen in their mouth so it makes it look like they're smiling report that they're more positive even though they have no idea that they're smiling. Right? They had no idea when asked in the experiment why they, why they thought they felt more positive. They had no idea why it was. Okay? Get it? Makes sense? Okay. Okay, what do we do here? I want you guys to guess two things. Okay. Write it down so I know you're not lying. Okay. First thing I want you to guess is my age. Okay. Don't blur out anything. Yes. You're covering it as if I'm gonna not know and then figure out what you're doing. I'm kidding. I know you're covering it because of them.
She's just covering it so you don't get offended if you look at it.
Yeah, she's gonna say like idiot. Yeah.
She just puts 57.
And then I want you to guess my salary of my first job. My yearly salary.
Your yearly salary.
Yeah.
You got a yearly salary for your job.
Oh, well, my first big boy job.
I don't even know what my yearly salary is. It's supposed to get weird.
Full-time job. Yearly salary. So, some people make like,
What was your first job?
I'm not gonna say anything actually. Just guess. Guess. What's that? No, I'll tell you.
I already hate this game.
Okay. We'll come back to this. Okay. Okay. So culture can influence the content of our schemas. Okay. There are two different types of thinking that we generalize based on the area of the world you're from. So people from the East, science shows they have more holistic thinking. Okay, so they are more likely to think of objects or like images in how they relate to the whole. Okay, the whole object. Okay. People from the West were more likely to focus on salient features and more like logical reasoning. Okay. And so I forgot to put it in this slide, but if you're wondering what this has to do with in this slideshow, wondering what this has to do with schemas is you show people an image of an airplane, okay, and then you show them another image of the airplane, and you ask them what changed from the first picture to the second picture. People from the West who have a more emphasis on analytic thinking are more likely to notice changes in the airplane. Okay, because the airplane changes a little bit from the first to second picture. People from the East who have more holistic type of thinking are more likely to notice changes in the background. Okay, so like in the trees or in the clouds. Okay, because they're more interested in how the little elements make up the whole. Okay. Okay, so how do we apply schemas when we're making judgments or decisions? Okay, this brings us to heuristics. Okay? And I'm going to talk about this for a little bit. Okay? Heuristics are mental shortcuts we use to make decisions quickly and efficiently. Okay, and have a picture of the map of the United States with a bunch of college symbols on it, because think about when you were applying to colleges, okay? That was a really important decision, and you had a lot of information at hand. But I'm sure you didn't process all that information. You didn't make an index of like the 3,000 schools in the United States, and then rank them based on all the things important to you, like sports team, like their psychology degree, how strong their professors are. You didn't do that, okay? We used mental shortcuts. We thought, well, George Mason is close enough to home, it's cheap enough, and their psychology program is good enough, so we'll go there. Cheap enough. Yeah.
Good enough.
You're not getting any extra credit.
Why is Alaska not on that map?
There's no
Oh,
schools in
isn't this? I'm gonna sound stupid, but is that not Alaska? It's no.
Why?
That's
Okay.
why.
Just joking.
He was testing us.
I was just testing you. People in the online section, I was just testing them.
Again.
Yeah. This school's good enough. Okay, it's good enough for me.
Never said it was great.
Yeah. And so, like I said, we don't consider all the possible pieces of information. Okay, we don't care to know everything. We can't know everything, and it takes too much effort. Okay, so we use heuristics. Okay, and heuristics are a rule of thumb. Okay, so I have a rule of thumb, 5-second rule. Okay, if somebody falls on the ground, a cookie. Okay.
Oh.
If it's just been like 5 seconds, I'll pick it up and eat it. Okay? I'm not gonna do a deep dive into like the microbiology of germs and hold it under a microscope. It's a heuristic. Okay?
What if it was 6 seconds?
I'm gonna throw that cookie out. Okay, do you guys have rules of thumb? Yes?
You can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all.
Okay, right. And maybe sometimes that's not the right thing to do, but most of the time it is, right? Sometimes you think back and you're like, damn, like I really should have let that person have it. You know?
Just an example, not necessarily false.
Right. What else? Any other rules of thumb? I'm gonna talk about the important ones. But do you guys have any unimportant ones? Okay. So the availability heuristic is a monumental heuristic in psychology. Okay? This is when we apply or we make a decision based on the ease that we can bring it into our minds. Okay, so think back to like we covered accessibility. Okay? The drawback to this is that the easiest to remember is not always the most accurate representation of the situation. Okay? Now I'll give you an example of how we use this. Okay? I want you to tell me, are there more words in the English language that begin with the letter R or have the letter R as the third word, as the third letter? Okay, come on.
As a third letter?
Yeah, okay, so you guys said the third letter, and you are correct, okay? But that's because you knew what I was trying to do here. Okay, in reality, most people say, oh, words that begin with R, right? Because those are the easiest to remember, right? Rhyme, rhythm, the reason, yeah. Reflux. And it's harder to remember words, to think of words that begin with R, okay? So, using this heuristic, we can make mistakes, okay? A better example of this is, okay, so you ask people in Germany, which city has a higher population? LA or Maine? Okay. People in Germany haven't heard of Maine, but they've heard of LA. Okay, it's available, so they say LA, and they're right. Okay. And then you ask another group of people from Germany, which city has a higher population, LA or San Antonio? Okay. They haven't heard of San Antonio. They've heard of LA, so they say LA, but they're wrong. San Antonio has a higher population than LA. Okay? Example of how the availability heuristic helps us make correct decisions as well as incorrect decisions. Okay? More often than not, we make correct decisions using it, but it does get us into trouble. Is that clear to everyone? We're all good on the availability heuristic? If it came up in a pop quiz, no, I'm kidding. Only so many times I can use that.
You really just want to start with
Nah. Okay, so what causes more fatalities in the United States? Strokes or accidents? Okay, we're more likely to think strokes because we hear about it on the news. Okay, when in reality, accidents is the higher cause of death. So we also have the representative heuristic. Okay, this is when we classify something and how similar it is to a typical case. Okay, basically, how similar someone is to a stereotypical version. Okay. So let's say I'm just going to school in New York and I meet a tan person with a mellow attitude, and I assume they're from California, right? Because that's my schema for people in California, mellow and tan. Okay. Being mellow and tan represents what I think someone from California looks like. Okay, and we already know how stupid this sounds, right? Whitney?
So like the representativeness heuristic is what like George Zimmerman was acting on probably.
So that, based on what we talked about, yes. Another example of this is, you run into someone on the street, you're running into your friend on the street, and they're wearing a suit, and they're not usually wearing a suit, so you assume that they're on their way to something important, or like perhaps someone walks into the room and they're wet, so we assume that it was raining outside. Okay, the wetness represents the possibility that it's raining outside. Could also be that they, went into a shower with their clothes on.
I mean,
Not likely,
still possible.
right? Does someone have their hand up here? No? I said that like an accusatory way.
How dare you?
My bad. Yeah. So the drawbacks of this is we ignore what we call base rate information. Okay? Base rate information is the frequency of the occurrence of an event. Okay, so I said I was going to school in New York, and I run into someone with a mellow attitude and who's tan, and I assume they're from California. But I'm ignoring base rate information. It is way more likely that someone at a New York State school is from New York than California. There are way more people at a New York State school from New York than in California. I'm ignoring that when I use the representative heuristic. Okay, I'm saying I don't care what the numbers say. This person is mellow and they're tan. So it's more likely they're from California.
Your logic is invalid.
Yeah. Okay. Make sense? Okay. Remember those questions I asked you?
Yes.
No.
Okay. Yeah. Oz, did you? Okay.
Oh no, no. I've got.
Okay,
I've got a
gotcha.
name. I've got a number.
Okay.
I've got two numbers.
How old do you think I am?
Silver hair, so probably.
That's first. Usually they just say white hair. Yeah. Let's
So
go
I'm
on.
gonna say 32.
Okay.
And 52,000. You said big boy, so I guess we're assuming that that's a full-time position.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Virginia.
I put 27, and I said 37.
37. Okay.
You know you're a psychology major.
Yeah. Zoe. Thank you.
And I really have no frame of reference for salary.
She really
Perfect.
wants to know post-tax or pre-tax.
Yeah.
The gross
Perfect. What did you say?
I said 15.
Oh my
She's
god.
not that college.
Yeah.
She's not far.
That's almost what I make today. Okay. So, and I want to do this real quick. So this is so I want to talk about anchoring and adjustment. Okay, that's another heuristic that we use. That is when we use a number or a value as a starting point. You remember how you said you had no frame of reference? I asked you how old you thought I was to create a frame of reference. Okay, and then based on that, I knew that whatever salary you picked was going to be anchored to that age. Okay, and you'll notice a trend. The younger they thought I was, the less money they thought I made. Okay, and people use this all the time as a sales technique. Okay, they offer you a starting price. Okay, and then when you negotiate from there, you're mentally anchored to that price. Okay, this is an example of a heuristic. Okay, and if you want to know, I was 29. I'm 29, and I made $50,000. Okay.
It was close. My number was close.
Thank you. All right, you guys can go.
I originally put 30, and then I'm like, I put 27 because I was